Recruitment for the Royal Guard to serve directly under Grand Duke Curtis Sean Burke. Curtis said, "What is this?" "This isn't a notice for the Navy, Curtis Sean Burke? He's the hero of the Royal Army." "Ah, that handsome Grand Duke?" a man asked. Something feels a bit off about this," Curtis said. "Aren't they just looking for someone to be cannon fodder?" "I heard the Grand Duke can be a real stickler," Chol said. "I'll do it." A girl said, "What? Chloe, are you serious?" Chol said, "Don't go. This will 100% be a terrible job." Chol asked, "Why do you think they'd even post this here?" "It's because no one else wants to do it. Upon commissioning, quarterly incentives amounting to 200% of the base salary shall be provided." Chol said, 200% every quarter means my family can live off that for a whole season. At least, for a while, we won't have to live like, whether it's war or hazard pay, I just have to last for a year. Even if he has a nasty personality, how bad can it really be? The most important thing is making sure my family doesn't have to starve." Chol asked, "I'm gonna make sure I crush this job no matter what." "However, Second Lieutenant Chloe Ambroise," I said, "heads to the I was the one who ended up getting screwed over. Curtis Sean Burke, the star of the 200% incentive. The cause, the root, the very existence. No one has survived more than 2 months under this obnoxious monster. Now, to explain the reason, Chloe thinks, actually, do I really even need to? Service inspection, in other words, punishment, it's a phrase the proud soldier of Ivani's, Curtis Sean Burke, loved to use." Curtis said, "Service inspection? In other words, heads on the floor." Curtis thinks, even though this is torture, I have to endure it, because. Is there really a reason all this punishment is necessary? One day, it's because someone's an admiral. The next day, we're forced to work overtime. "Why'd you make me your adjutant?" Chloe said. "I gotta throw this away before I get caught." The hero of the kingdom, Brigadier General Curtis Sean Burke, the king's younger brother, a Grand Duke, and my direct superior. He's obsessed with working, so when he works overtime, naturally, that means his adjutant has to, as well, and if you ever fall asleep on the job, he punishes you for having a lack of discipline. Chloe asked, "Wow, I'd really get killed if I get caught. But still, this is okay. I can deal with the punishments. At least I'm getting paid on time. It's already been 3 months since I've been here. There was a time when I debated on whether to kill the Duke and become a criminal or jump out of our barracks window, but I've managed to pull through thus far." "And now," Curtis said, "Warrant Officer Ambroise, you heard me, correct?" Chloe asked. "Sir, yes, sir." Officer Chol Ambroise reporting. "I heard you loud and clear." Curtis, "Good. I heard you loud and clear, as well. Do you want to get punished by the Grand Duke? Was it?" She thinks, seriously? Why'd he have to walk in at that exact? Chloe said, "You want to get punished by the Grand Duke again?" "I am not sure what I was thinking. As an apology, let me extend this inspection for another 30 minutes. Curtis said, "There's no need for that. It does seem our warrant officer has become quite lax after 3 months, though. In order to get you back in shape," Curtis said, "I'm sure a pay cut should do the trick." "You've got to be kidding me." Curtis said. "Also," Chloe said, "Sir, yes, sir." Curtis said, "Sir, yes, sir. There will be a state banquet with the Duke of Glintland today. You will be there to assist me." Curtis said, "Forgive me, Your Majesty, but I have no gowns fit for a banquet." Curtis said, "Why would a warrant officer need to wear a dress to a banquet? You already have the Royal Guard uniform. Anyway, be at my residence by 6 p.m. A man thinks I'll kill you." "Sir, yes, sir." Chloe said, "Good evening." And she thinks, this place is huge. It's so much larger than my house. Things sure are different when you're third ranked in the nation. Curtis said, "Lady Chloe Ambroise, this way." An old man said, "To think he's bringing a female adjutant to the banquet. Our lord sure is determined." Chloe said, "Pardon?" "The banquet today is essentially a matchmaking event to set up our lord for marriage." Chloe said, "Come again?" Chloe said, "Come again? The Duchess should have plenty of eligible suitors. Why would she? Well, our lord doesn't have much say due to his lineage." Chloe said, he doesn't have much say? Is he being pressured into this? I would love to have some dirt on him myself. Warrant Officer Ambroise, Curtis said, you're later than expected. She thinks we're wearing the same outfit, yet there's such a difference. Chloe said, I was told I looked like a sewer rat. Curtis replied, well, hurry up and get over here. What are you doing? She said, sir, yes, sir. My apologies, sir. Curtis said, your uniform is all wrinkled, and where are your ceremonial decorations? She asked, pardon? Curtis said, at least put this on. I can't have my adjutant looking like that. She thinks, what's happening? Why, is he being nice to me? Chloe said, gasp, thank you very much, sir. Chloe thinks, did he get shot or something? Curtis said, it's like putting pearls on a pig. Chloe thinks, I guess not. She asked, yes, sir. Wow, she thinks, are those all electric decorations? Curtis said, Warrant Officer Ambroise, stop gawking. Chloe said, my apologies, sir. I'll be more careful. The king said, Grand Duke Burke, you've arrived. Curtis bowed, Your Excellency. King said, I was just looking for you. Come take a look at this. King said, I'm sure you've heard, but this is your future bride, the Duchess of Glintland, Lady Isabel. Curtis said, why is she my future bride? This is the first I'm hearing of this. By tradition, those involved in royal marriages are the last to know. It won't, but just get married. Nope, she's not my type. King said, nope, you're my younger brother, so you have to get married. Curtis said, nope, I'll do what I want. King asked, nope, she'll be here soon, so just go through with it. Nope, I'll pass. Nope, I know you don't have a woman, so just get married. Nope, I'm good. Chloe thinks, are they really bickering like this? This is how the top people in our nation argue. It's a bit disappointing. Curtis said, my apologies, Your Majesty, but your unworthy brother has something he'd like to confess. King replied, nope, you'll… Wait, what? Curtis asked, there's a woman I've already promised to wed. King said, do you really think I believe that? Curtis said, right here. Chloe Ambroise. The love of my life who came into my world not long ago. Chloe asked me. Life never goes the way you think it will. The one thing I had only ever thought about, she thinks, I really want to just punch him once. No, I just want to make him put his head to the ground once. Well, due to the events of that day, Chloe said, head on the floor, his life and mine had changed forever. What do you think of cutting your hair? Chloe said, pardon? I didn't hear you properly. Never mind, Curtis said, listen, at least you had your hair tied up. If you hadn't, he probably would have cut it right away. Chloe said, my hair? Curtis replied, no. Your throat. She ate the apple. Curtis said, he is extremely obsessed with cleanliness. But that's not the only thing. I haven't gotten off of work, and you're trying to leave already? There's also, work overtime. Let's not forget, Curtis asked, Warrant Officer? Why are you trying to go home? And still, I saw the report you submitted. It was horrendous. Do it again. But now, Chloe asked, on your knees, Your Highness. Let's return to the announcement of their romantic relationship. Curtis said, Chloe Ambroise, the love of my life who came into my world not long ago. She thinks, why? Curtis said, that foolish side of her is one of her charms. Chloe said, what did you just say? I knew something was off when he suddenly invited me to this party. What is this nonsense? If he doesn't set things straight soon, this is going to be a disaster. Chloe went on and said, Your Majesty, this is the Grand Duke's signature move, speaking through his aura. Drawback, incomprehensible. It was ineffective. Chloe said, I don't get what you're trying to. Curtis clenched the hand of Chloe and went away and said, special promotion, incentives, reassignment, special privileges, paid leave, and salary negotiation benefits. She was shocked. The king said, what are you doing? Why are you suddenly holding her hand so tightly? Chloe said, writing so fast that it can't be seen with the naked eye. Curtis whispered, and anything you want. Curtis said, at this point, some people may get the wrong idea. Why is he trying to marry me? Does he really love me? Nope, not a chance. There is a system called morganatic marriage in the kingdom of Ivani's. To put it simply, if the Grand Duke were to marry a commoner, he would also become a commoner, and lose his right to the throne. To avoid this, he must marry someone of the same status, but currently, there is no one the Grand Duke likes. If he were to marry the Duchess of Glintland, it would strengthen the relationship between the two countries, and that's something, of course, the king welcomes with open arms. Also, even if the Duke were to find someone to try to avoid getting married, the only people around willing to do such a favor would be commoners. Get married off to a foreign land, or marry a commoner and lose his claim to the throne. He was stuck with two impossible choices. And this is where I emerge as the variable. Although my family is quite poor, we are surprisingly still considered lower nobility. So, if he were to marry me, he'd be able to keep his status and not have to marry the Duchess. I can't easily reject the Grand Duke's request, and even if we do get married, he could easily divorce me, a person he will never love. That's me, Chloe Ambroise. Chloe thinks, isn't this a little too perfect, only for him? Curtis whispered, incentives, special promotions, reassignment. You always seem desperate for money, no? A girl said, sis. Did you know? If you pour water on bread, it feels even more filling. A boy said, if it weren't for you, we would have had to starve again today. Curtis shouted, it's true. The boy replied, His Highness has already proposed to me. Chloe thinks, negotiations are supposed to happen before something like this. Curtis said, silence. She said, but still, how could you do this in front of His Majesty, my darling? Curtis said, huh? Chloe shouted, I've never been so moved. Yes. Curtis said, let's get married. All the people stood in the hall and clapped. Curtis said, let's talk in private later. Chloe said, yes, that's exactly what I was hoping for. 30 minutes before, the Grand Duke would have his head bowing to his subordinate. 15 days isn't enough time, Curtis said, right? Curtis was born to the King of Ivani's and the Princess of Glintland. The history of Ivani's. Curtis's mother was extremely wise. Curtis's mother said, I don't want my son to end up dying due to political conflicts. Please allow him to hold titles from both nations. I don't want my son to end up dying due to political conflicts. Please allow him to hold titles from both nations. The issue, however, was that not only was he extremely handsome, but he was also an exceptionally bright and talented prince. Although he entered the military to fulfill his duty as the second son, as long as he remains the Grand Duke of Berk, his right to the throne remains valid. This made the king extremely uneasy. The king said, even so, I never expected the king to try and send you off to Glintland before the prince could ascend the throne. Chloe said, how about finding one of the ladies that used to be so infatuated with you? Oh, how about the young woman from the Navy, Lady Arya, was it? Curtis said, also, there's someone I already have in mind. I'm not sure how much she'll cooperate, though. I don't know who that lady is, but she sure has an unfortunate fate. That unfortunate lady, Curtis said, thank you for lending me this. Thank you for lending me this. I didn't expect you to play along so convincingly. Chloe said, I guess I discovered a talent I didn't know I had. Brief flashback, the king said to Curtis and Chloe, are you saying you're engaged? You know lying in front of the king is considered treason, right? Why have you kept this a secret for this long? Chloe said, that's because I was originally planning to reject him. I thought His Highness was just trying to toy with me when he proposed. I believed our love was nothing more than a fleeting romance. Curtis thinks, who is this woman? Chloe said, that's what I thought, but had I known you were sincere, especially enough to admit your love in front of His Majesty. Fix your face. I'm trying my best, the king said. I see you've found a subordinate quite skilled in acting. I'm sure that must have been reassuring to you, but do you really expect me to believe this right now? She thinks, even that wasn't enough to convince him? And then it hit me. A card I could play that I knew would get the king to believe us. Chloe said, if you don't believe us, I'll have no other choice but to show you proof. The king said, proof? Chloe said, this brooch I'm wearing on my chest, it's what I was given as a symbol of my beloved's sincerity when he proposed to me. It has the emblem of the House of Burke engraved on the back. Would you like to check for yourself? Chloe said, of course. If you also say this was staged, we wouldn't have any way to refute it. However, I do believe continuing to demand more proof like this won't sit well with the other nobles present. In other words, do you have proof that we're lying? Let's not ruin the mood here and wrap things up if not, End of flashback. The king's face at that moment was so good. It's a shame that we were the only ones to see it. Tremelchem, this is 100% fake. But, Curtis said, if I was there alone, I never would have gotten such an expression out of him. Chloe said, so, what is your plan from here on out? She said, originally, I was planning on politely asking you to cooperate with me by getting married? Not marriage. I was just going to ask you to pretend to be my lover for the time being. But now that things have turned out like this, I guess there's no other choice. Do you understand what you're saying? Chloe said, you want me to act like your hopelessly smitten wife, right? Curtis thinks, is this really how I'm getting married? I've never even got to have a real relationship before. Chloe said, thank you, truly. Curtis said, there's no need to thank me. However, Chloe said, I'm not going to be the only one at a loss here. I have a few needs as well. Let's not forget all I had to go through. Currently, I'm someone you absolutely need, right? No matter what it takes, you've got to keep me around, right? Curtis replied, that's right. Chloe said, then get on your knees, Your Highness. Curtis said, you want me to kneel down to you? Chloe said, that's right. Killerman thinks, hurry up, Your Highness. She thinks, all of the overtime and punishments, I'm going to make you pay for it. She said, hurry up and kneel, show me how sincere you are so I can trust you. Curtis said, is this what you really want from me? Chloe said, yes, so hurry up and kneel. You're right. I understand what you want now. I forgot something important. Chloe said, huh? Curtis said, it seems we skipped an important step that shouldn't be overlooked. Curtis said, ambroise. Chloe said, yes? This is the ring my mother received when the late king proposed to her. Curtis said, will you marry me? She thinks, is this really happening? Is that true? The Grand Duke of Burke already has a fiancée? The Duchess of Glintland. Curtis said, will you marry me? She said, pardon? Curtis proposed her a ring and said, I'm sure you already know, but this is the gem referred to as the sacred flame. Getting married without giving you a proper proposal isn't right. I didn't expect you to have this romantic side to you. I'm surprised. What do you think? Does this satisfy you? Chloe said, I'm disgusted. You're trying to use an heirloom to propose to me? That's way too much pressure. Curtis said, huh? Isn't this what you wanted? Then what did you want me to kneel for? Chloe replied, I meant it literally. I want to see your head hit the floor. Curtis said, you're joking, right? For what reason? What do you even gain from that? Chloe replied, I'm sure if you think hard about the past, you'll find the answer. First, you've prevented me from getting married in the future. Then after throwing me in such a situation, you asked for my help, which I provided. So the fact remains that no matter what happens, you need my permission. Curtis replied, I'll pay you. Chloe said, oh, I'm sure you will. But what about my family? They now have to deal with scrutiny from other nobles because of our sudden engagement. Marrying you isn't just a burden I alone must bear. My family will constantly be looked down upon for being of a lower status now. And for your information, I have 3 younger siblings who haven't even finished their schooling yet. Because of your actions today, they've all been thrust into an unimaginable situation right alongside me. Honestly, even if you were to pay me a fortune, this isn't something I'd willingly do. But what's done is done. There's no avoiding marrying you now. Curtis said, I'll do whatever it takes to protect your family and solve any other issues. Chloe replied, thank you. But regardless of that, I want to make it crystal clear that I am the one who holds the power in this contract. So head to the ground. Curtis said, so what you're saying is, you want me to do this to prove you have the upper hand? Chloe replied, if you don't want to, feel free to start a new life on the shores of Glintland. She thinks, did I go too far? Maybe I should have held back a bit. No, this is when I need to be firm. But still, Curtis said. I fully understand what you're trying to say. She replied, huh? From now on, you'll have to bear the full cost of making me submit like this. Curtis bowed and his head hit the ground and asked, how long do I have to keep this up? Chloe said, you're actually doing it? Curtis replied, you're the one who told me to. Chloe said, you can get up now, I believe you, and I'm a bit afraid of your potential retaliation. Curtis replied, retaliation? Do I seem like I'd ever show such petty behavior? Spot on, I won't retaliate. Regardless, this has made one thing very clear. You're exactly the type of wife I was looking for. Chloe said, you mean someone who knows how to carry through with a deal, right? Curtis replied, that's right. It's exactly that sharp perception of yours I like. I don't want you to be the only one having to sacrifice in this arrangement. Especially since I'd like to avoid any lingering grudges or having to pay a steeper price further down the road. Chloe Ambroise, let me propose once again. Chloe said, while we are married, use me to your heart's content. Curtis said, I am of royal blood, after all. You may not own my soul, but will you become its temporary master? She said, his temporary master. Why does he make it sound like he's some kind of stray dog? Curtis said, you don't want to? Chloe said, it's not like I have a choice. Very well, I'll become your temporary owner. Curtis gave and said, my mother's life changed after wearing this ring. I swear that it won't bring misfortune to you either. She thinks I really am engaged now. Curtis said, well, we've got work to do. Chloe said, huh? What kind of work? It's the dead of the night, and just us two, now that we're engaged. Curtis thinks, don't tell me that he wants to. Chloe said, even if we're engaged, this is too much. We're strictly business partners. Curtis replied, what are you talking about? Now that we're engaged, I'm cutting off your overtime pay. Sit down and grab a pen. We've got a whole year of training sessions for the soldiers to plan. She thinks, lies, his pettiness really knows no bounds. The Duke and Chloe are getting married? Curtis said, now that I think about it, I did think something was strange the other day. Chloe was drawing a portrait of the Duke while she was working late. Wasn't that just a simple sketch with holes for the eyes, nose, and mouth? Chloe said, the Duke doesn't understand how I feel at all. Curtis said, maybe she was doing something like this. What in the world have you done? Chloe said to her little sister, things kind of just happened. Leah, Chloe's little sister, shouted, weren't you just trashing him the other day? Chloe said, yes, but that's because I thought he was a fool who didn't understand my feelings. Leah shouted, just be honest and say you sold yourself off for money. Chloe replied, you're right. Leah said, do you really think I'm a fool or something? Who would actually pay you money to marry them? Chloe clenched her head and shouted, are you my sister or my nemesis, huh? Ack. Leah said, so when's the wedding? Oh, in 7 months? That's sooner than I expected. Chloe replied, no, in 7 days from now. Leah said, are you kidding me? Is this it? Girl said, this is all you could find on Chloe Ambroise? Burke said, the man have a warm cup of tea. Now then, man said, can you tell me about what you saw that day? Burke said, I can't forget it. Man said, I can't forget it. How could a woman, with such a terrifying face in front of her say, man remembered it, my love? How is that even possible? What insolence! The married invitation card was written, my love, echoed loudly throughout the diplomatic banquet hall. Grand Duke Burke, not being a king, refused to have a marriage for political gain and declared his intentions to marry his current lover. Even Prince Frederick offered his support. Nab said, as if Duke Burke wasn't enough, the prince too? Is this how royals are supposed to behave? Burke said, it seems I've unintentionally caused turmoil for the royal family. I'm truly sorry. Man replied, no, I should be the one apologizing. To think a member of the royal family would so openly say they don't care about national interests. Burke replied, from the royal family's perspective, it may actually be a good thing. After all, won't the people rely much more on His Majesty, rather than someone who disregards national interests for his own personal desires? Man replied, that is true. I guess I never thought about it that way. Regardless, since their marriage declaration is official, I can't really interfere anymore. However, Love doesn't always last. Why don't you stay a little longer? Burke replied, My, it would be an honor. I shall take my leave first. Please enjoy your rest. I shall take my leave first. Please enjoy your rest. She punched the glass. She said, I came all the way to Ivani's for this. Ugh, if only I had the chance to meet him once before the wedding. No. It's not over until it's over. Maid replied, Did you call for me? Burke replied, Where are the items I brought as my dowry? Where are the items I brought as my dowry? Let's go take a look. This one isn't bad. Send one of these vases as a wedding gift to the Grand Duke. Greetings, my lord. Warrant Officer Chloe, reporting. Curtis said, Come in. Have you finished moving? Is your family adjusting well? Chloe replied, Yes, they seem to be quite happy. Leah said, Are we in heaven? Did I die already? I was still in the prime of my youth. Chloe replied, This is our new home. It's the annex of the Grand Duke's estate. Girls said, Qua. The playground is so soft. Chloe said, That's the bed. Wedding planner said, Wonderful. Now that we've secured your family's safety until the wedding, the two of you also need to do what must be done. The first step to becoming a married couple. Drafting a prenuptial agreement. Let's go through the terms each of you requested. Let's take a look at the warrant officers first. Chloe said, All right then, my first condition, Clause 1, no overtime work during the contract period. Chloe said, Denied. Wait. At least hear me out. This isn't just for my sake. Think of what other people will think. Do you want to be remembered as a heartless husband who forces his wife to work overtime? Curtis said, I'm pretty sure I'll already be remembered as a heartless boss. A husband and boss aren't the same. Ha! No matter what, overtime is unavoidable. You'll have to act as the Grand Duchess 24/7. And there will definitely be situations where you must handle key duties like attending banquets. Chloe said, That also counts as overtime? Curtis said, Did you not think about that? Chloe said, No. Curtis said, All right. Then as long as it comes to your duties as a warrant officer in the Royal Guard, there will be overtime. We first need to consult the Military Law Committee to see whether you can remain my adjutant after marriage. Chloe said there shouldn't be any issues regarding that. Curtis said, How do you know? Next, the contract fee is fine. But the salary increase is not. Chloe said, Why not? Are you really gonna be this stingy? Your salary doesn't come out of my pockets. It comes from the National Treasury. If we increase your salary now, ING said, Oh no, embezzlement's gotcha. See off to Glintland for you. We'd be giving the king a perfect excuse to use against us. Instead, I'll personally provide you with an allowance to maintain your dignity. I'll give you 10 million shillings a year. Chloe said, Thank you, my lord. I'll make sure to do my best in this marriage. She said, Now for the last clause. Let's see, Curtis said, Is this about the service inspections again? I'm starting to get slightly irritated, Chloe said, and no, I won't ask you to do that again. I just wanted to have it down in writing. There are detailed provisions. Please write them down. Go ahead, Chloe said. Clause 3:1. Curtis Sean Burke shall regard Chloe Ambroise as his superior and show her the utmost respect. Curtis replied, Yes. Clause 3:2. If Chloe Ambroise invokes this contract, Curtis Sean Burke is obligated to grant any request 3 times during the contract period. Curtis said, What's that supposed to mean? Do I seem like some kind of magical genie to you? Chloe replied, I've actually put some thought into this one. After all, what I'm doing here is openly defying the king. Curtis replied, That's true, Chloe said, and if the king gets angry, it will be easier for him to target me rather than you. Curtis replied, Yes. Chloe said, So, my life and my family's lives will be in greater danger, no? Curtis replied, I see, so, during our contract period I have to prioritize your interests over mine 3 times, right? Fine. Clause 3. Curtis Sean Burke must always obey Chloe Ambroise. Wedding planner said, Now, let's go over the Duke's conditions. Clause 1. From the moment Chloe Ambroise takes on the Burke surname, she must fulfill the duties that come with it to the best of her abilities. Chloe said, That's what we talked about earlier. Understood. Clause 2. Chloe Ambroise acknowledges that she is in a contractual relationship with Curtis Sean Burke and shall not interfere in Curtis Sean Burke's romantic affairs during the contract period. Chloe said, "You're planning on dating?" Curtis said, "It's not like we'll be married forever, so why are you so surprised? Do you love me or something?" Curtis said, "No, it's not that, it's just a bit strange." "You're going to date?" Chloe said, "Other people, sure, but your Grace, in a relationship?" Curtis said, "Ack, what do you think I am? A robot?" "Beep beep, initiating service inspection, beep beep, do it properly, start again." Chloe said, "A robot, vacuum cleaner?" Chloe said, "If it weren't for clause number 3, I would have sent you straight to the brig." Curtis said, "As long as you bear with me for a little, I'll find another lady, start dating, and divorce you. So don't worry." Chloe replied, "Ah, so the reason for our divorce will be your infidelity? Understood." She thought, "That sounds like a good deal to me. If we're in agreement, let's move on to the next clause." Clause 3. Chloe Ambroise will not invade Curtis Sean Burke's personal space or harbor or express any personal interest in him during the contract period. Chloe said, "What constitutes your personal space?" Curtis said, "My bed." Chloe said, "You know we're married, right? Even if it's just for show, we have to fool the servants. Wouldn't that be hard to do if we don't use the same bed?" Curtis said, "Even if it's just for show, we have to fool the servants. Wouldn't that be hard to do if we don't use the same bed? Do you have feelings for me already? It's best you give up." Wedding planner said, "I am certainly starting to feel something. Anger, rage." Curtis said, "This should be fine." Clause 3. Chloe Ambroise will not invade Curtis Sean Burke's personal space or harbor or express any personal interest in him during the contract period. Approved for the Chloe. Sounds good. Curtis said, "However, when we're in bed, make sure to tie your hair up and wear long clothes." Chloe replied, "Fine." Wedding planner said, "And with that, the contract is officially complete." Curtis said, "Noel, I trust you, but you know this is a secret, especially from Agatha, right?" Wedding planner Noel smiled and said, "Of course." Chloe said, "Agatha?" Girl said, "Ah, she's my little sister." "Ah, she's my little sister." Chloe was wonderful, I can't believe it. Chloe said, "How could something like that happen?" Poor thing. Agatha said, "I know. Agatha doesn't even receive contractual payments like you." Curtis said, "Noel, stop fooling around and get a fake contract ready to submit to the royal court." Noel said, "That should be simple. The title can just be passed down to your child." Noel said, "What about the dowry?" Curtis said, "What can you expect from a soldier on a salary? I'll cover everything. Just write down 80 million shingles." Chloe said, "What?" Noel said, "Glintland proposed a dowry of 80 million shillings as well. It's basically an open act of defiance. Additionally, with this amount, Noel said, you take one as well." Curtis said, "It'll make it seem like I truly love you." Chloe thought, 80 million, an 80 million shillings job, seriously? Will I be able to play the part successfully? Curtis said, "Great, now the contract's complete. Shall we move on to the main event of the wedding?" Chloe thought, main event of the wedding? Chloe said, "Gasp and GHTH, that hurts." Curtis said, "Stop pretending to struggle. It's not like this is your first time." Chloe shouted, "First time? I've never worn such an uncomfortable dress before. Is this really what all brides go through? Do they not have bones in their body?" Julia said, "The wedding dress is the highlight of any wedding." Chloe said, "Can't I wear something else?" "It's too small," Julia replied. "Still, it's the dress His Excellency's mother wore, so you have to wear it." Curtis said, "Yes, so try to bear with it. It's a dress filled with my love for you, after all." Chloe thought, should I just kill him? Julia said, "Lady Ambroise, just try to endure it. Once the wedding is over, I'll make 100 perfectly fitting outfits." "One more pull!" Chloe cried, Chloe angry and said, "And no, I can't, I just can't do this." Curtis said, I think it's a lack of core strength. Hand me the ribbon." Curtis clenched his waist. Julia saw and said, "Oh my." Chloe thought, isn't this a bit too close? I can feel his breath on my neck. It's making me feel a bit strange." She gave away. Curtis said, This isn't going to work." Chloe said, "I am pretty sure, I just fractured something." Curtis said, "Stop exaggerating. She thought, no wonder something felt strange. No wonder something felt strange. It's because I was left defenseless. Julia, come in. Already? Curdy said, trying to get a new dress 3 days before the wedding would be difficult, right? Julia said, Your Excellency, unfortunately, getting a custom-made dress would be impossible. Curdy said, What should we do? Should we try adding some embellishments? We're tight on time, but it would be faster than making one from scratch. I suppose there's no other choice. How long would it take to alter a ready-made dress? Chloe said, How long would it take to alter a ready-made dress? Julia replied, Then you'll have to try them all on and match any suitable embellishments. Even that would put us on a tight schedule. Should we get ready to leave right away, then? Chloe said, Hold on a moment. I have an idea. Finally, it was time for the long-awaited wedding. It was a nice clear day, with the soft serenade of birds in the air, a handsome husband, and the star of the wedding, the beautiful bride. Curtis said, You seem tired. Chloe said, Yeah, thanks to a certain someone. The consecration ceremony, the blood oath ceremony, memorizing the names of all the nobles, the declaration. There was just so much. Curtis said, Did you think becoming royalty was easy? Chloe said, It was for you. If you're jealous, then you should have been born into a royal family as well. She thought, Ugh, it's not like I can just hit him, either. Prince Frederick said, Aren't you teasing your future wife a little too much, uncle? Curtis thought, Prince Frederick. She said, My lord, I am Chloe Ambroise. Prince Frederick said, At ease. You'll be my superior at the end of the day. Chloe said, I cannot, sir. We're still not officially married yet, so I am still merely a soldier. Prince Frederick said, Wow, what a diligent and earnest person. How did you end up marrying my uncle? If you're being threatened, shake around some carrots. Curtis said, Enough of your jokes. Frederick said, Actually, I came to let you know it's your turn to go pray. Curtis said, How great would it have been if you had just started with that. I'll be off then. See you later. She thought, this is awkward. I'm alone again with another superior. Frederick said, Since my uncle has left, may I ask you something, Lady Ambroise? Chloe said, Pardon? Frederick said, Why are you marrying the Grand Duke? She thought, Is he testing me? Chloe said, Because we are in love with each other, my lord. Frederick said, Love, you say? The day my uncle turned the banquet hall upside down, he came to visit me that night. Curtis said, Would you grant me permission to use the temple? Frederick said, The temple? Curtis said, For my wedding? His Majesty would never open it for me. So please grant me this one request. I won't ask you for something like this again. Frederick said, Again, you say, for someone who lost their control in public for being so in love, doesn't that statement feel a bit awkward? Frederick said to Chloe honestly, I can understand his position. He has no interest in the throne, but my father is unnecessarily insecure and tries to keep him in check. Now he's even trying to use marriage as an excuse to send him off to Glintland. Chloe thought, Is it really okay to talk about His Majesty like this? Prince Frederick said, And once he's there, they'll probably assign him to some remote territory and use him as cannon fodder against pirates. Of course, he'd hate that. That I understand perfectly. However, the one I can't understand is you. There's no benefit for you. If you were looking to raise your social standing, you wouldn't have spent years slaving away in the military. Even if you made some financial agreement, there's always the risk of His Majesty coming after you if you get a divorce. In that case, no matter how much money you've received, it would all just turn into useless scraps of paper. And then there's trying to continue your military career. Once you've fallen out of the Majesty's grace, it would be impossible. No matter how I think about it, you only stand to lose. So let's be honest, why are you really marrying my uncle? Chloe thought, Well, because I wanted to see your uncle kneel down to me. The prince sure has a logical mind. I must have caused a lot of confusion for him. To be honest, Chloe said, I've admired the Grand Duke for a long time. She thought, All right, it's time to explain. Chloe said, His achievements in the war were all over the newspapers, right? That's why I applied for the adjutant position, and luckily, I got accepted. Then by pure luck, we fell in love. I'm just an extremely lucky girl. She thought, Was that too much? Prince replied, I see. As expected, you're a perfect fit for the position of Grand Duchess. Chloe replied, thank you? Curtis said, there's no need to thank him. He means you know how to lie. Prince said, you're back, uncle? Curtis said, stop bothering your aunt already. I could hear everything from downstairs. Prince said, bothering? I was simply worried. You might be extorting an innocent citizen. Are you truly the romantic type, uncle? Curtis said, I suddenly feel like torturing you instead of the people. Just go already, Frederick. The priest is looking for you. Prince said, nice timing. I'd better leave before you try picking on me anymore. I'll be off. Anyway, Lady Ambroise, I sincerely hope everything you told me was the truth. I truly do hope my uncle has finally found someone to genuinely love. If you're ever having a hard time, don't forget about the carrots, Frederick. I know, I'm going. Chloe thought, true love. I'm sure you know better than anyone that something like that is impossible. Curtis said, shall we get going too? There's a lot we must do today. Chloe replied, yes, my lord. She said, aren't you excited for the wedding today? I can't believe the Grand Duke of Berk is rushing into a marriage. Berk said, I know, right? Wait, do you think those two had an unexpected accident? Girl said, oh my. How vulgar. Still, they're doing things the right way, a temple ceremony, and the royal guard. Well, they have to at least make the ceremony nice. The bride doesn't come from an affluent family, after all. Berk said, look over there. The only family on the bride's side are just some kids. Not even her parents are here. Man said, listen to them act like they're the only ones here. What total nuisances. Girl said, just try to bear with it. Man replied, they're being so annoying though. Girl said, still, we should behave. Getting angry is only going to tarnish our sister's reputation. Man said, do you really think a few words from me will ruin her image? If anything, she's the one here disgracing the place. People were talking, look, it's the Duchess of Glintland, she's so beautiful. I can see why the King of Glintland hastily granted her a title, and sent her over to seduce the Grand Duke. She's going to completely overshadow the bride. To compete with her level of beauty, no ordinary dress or makeup will cut it. Rumor has it, they even had to go through Queen Mildred's things. Oh my, at least then maybe she can put up some type of competition. So she had to go that far just to barely win? Curtis said, everyone, please take your seats. A voice came, oh my, it must be starting now. Berk said, let's see how well she's prepared herself. We shall now begin the wedding ceremony of Brigadier General Curtis Sean Ivanis Berk and Warrant Officer Chloe Ambroise. They shall now make their entrance. Man said, why you've gotta be kidding me, they're wearing their military uniforms. Let's go back a little. 3 days ago, when Chloe's ribs were in pain, Chloe said, instead of trying to use such inhumane methods, I have a better idea. Curtis said, tell me. Chloe said, the only essential accessories for a royal wedding are the crown and ceremonial sash, right? Julia said, correct. Without them, it wouldn't be recognized as a wedding. Since Crown Princess Beatrice already sent over a crown, we don't have to worry about that. Curtis said, but I'm sure you're not planning on only wearing a crown and your underwear. She replied, of course not. Chloe said, we are the Royal Guard, after all. The Royal Guard has its own ceremonial uniform. Julia said, pardon? You're planning on wearing a military uniform? Curtis said, you mean the white ceremonial uniform. Chloe said, obviously, because His Excellency loves me so much, you put up a little resistance at first. But as a member of the Guard, your loyalty remains steadfast. In other words, you are completely uninterested in the throne. Curtis gave the pledge by wearing a military uniform to my wedding. I'm showing how uninterested I am in the throne, so leave me be. Chloe said, isn't that a great way to make a point? Julia said, still, this is a wedding we're talking about. You're not going to really wear that, right? Curtis said, yes. Julia said, that's a good idea, Chloe. Then, shall we go ahead with the unprecedented wearing of ceremonial uniforms for the wedding? Chloe said, what kind of political move is this? Curtis said, right. Who would have thought they'd wear military uniforms to the wedding? But it kind of looks impressive, doesn't it? Who could have guessed that Queen Mildred's crown would suit a military uniform so well. Women are talking. I thought the bride would never be able to measure up to the Duchess of Glintland, but that's not the case at all. In fact, they've got completely different vibes. Man asked I, Priest James Luther, am here to take witness of this holy union. Before the guardians of Ivanis, Ivanarus and Grangus ad, do you swear that your love will last forever? Curtis thinks forever, huh? Well, we'll part ways soon enough. But still, looking at how things are set up here, your second wedding shouldn't be difficult at all. Chloe thinks next time, you'll wear a proper dress instead of a uniform, and instead of being nervous like you are now, you'll have a smile on your face, and be hand in hand, with your true love, and not me. This is annoying. Until that day comes, there is so much I have to do. Curtis said, yes, I do. James said, do you, the bride, also swear? She said, yes, I do. People are talking. Oh, did he just smile? My word, he's so handsome. To be honest, I came here just to see his grace. James said, groom, do you have something to present in front of God? Curtis said, yes, I do. She thinks, isn't this a bit too close? Curtis said, there we go. The uniform suits you quite nicely. James said, all right, then let's continue with the vows dash. Curtis said, oh, and one more thing. Girls are talking, that's the sacred flame, right? Queen Mildred's ring, Curtis said, as a token of my love and faithfulness, I offer this ring to you, Chloe Ambroise. People are whispering, he's giving that to her? No way. He must actually be serious about her. He's giving that to her? No way. He must actually be serious about her. James said, why is everyone reacting like this? Isn't it normal to give the bride something like that? Girls said it is, if it was going to Chloe Burke, but right now, he didn't say Chloe Burke, he said he was giving it to Chloe Ambroise. That ring, regardless of this marriage, belongs to our sister. Chloe said, why is he? Act natural. Just accept it for now. Speaking again through his eyes, Chloe learns quickly. Why are you giving this to me? Curtis said, last time, you didn't understand me at all, but I see you've learned. Well, just think of it as compensation for damages. Chloe thinks, compensation for damages? What kind of damages is he planning by giving me something this expensive? James said, well then, the two of you may seal this marriage with a kiss. Chloe said, huh? Curtis smiled and said, you saw this coming, didn't you? It's a wedding, after all. Curtis kissed her. Chloe. Girls were talking, wondering what the Duchess of Glintland was going to do. They were sure she had been confident she could come and win him over with her looks, but the timing wasn't good. How could she have known the Grand Duke was already in a relationship? Honestly, the rumors said this was a rush marriage because of His Majesty's interference, but after what they saw today, that kiss, it was true love. Their bond must be so special. They even left right after the ceremony without enjoying the banquet. Right now, those two must be having a nice and fiery time, right? She brushed her teeth and said, that was complete torture. You didn't even give me a heads up before the kiss. Curtis said, who doesn't know that people kiss at a wedding? Chloe said, I knew that. But still. Yeah, but you're supposed to be a germaphobe. See? In the blink of an eye, you've already changed your clothes. And it's not like it was just a peck, we were totally, Curtis said, if we hadn't, people would have started talking. That's why I had to do it. Take it easy, you're bleeding. Chloe said, at this point, I might as well just cash in that damages compensation package. Curtis replied, do whatever you please once we're divorced. Before then, let's finish what we've started. Chloe said, we got married already. What else is left? Curtis said, it's your first day as the Grand Duchess. Did you have servants at your old place? Chloe said, of course not. Curtis said, well, it looks like my staff are in for a whole new experience too. Welcome home, Grand Duchess. These will be the hands and feet that serve you from now on. Chloe thought, there are so many of them, it's kind of overwhelming. I'm in charge of these people now? Curtis said, just so you know, about 80% of the staff are basically spies for the king. She thought, I'm screwed. Then the butler introduced himself. He thought he was the epitome of a high-class attendant, and that even though he was supposed to become the royal palace's chief attendant, he had been sent here instead. The king had commanded him to serve at the Burke residence to watch Curtis's every move, and if possible, to find his weaknesses. Philip asked why Curtis lived so responsibly, wishing he would act like a proper duke and indulge a little. But things were different now. The Duchess had arrived. As a former Navy recruit from a humble family, he assumed she was only aiming for higher status. Philip asked when the couple would be coming down so he could pay his respects, but the servants said they wanted to rest. Already he thought she was acting arrogant and cheeky. Still, he insisted on waiting. When Chloe and Curtis came down, Philip bowed politely, but inside he mocked them. Chloe greeted him kindly, even offering a handshake, which confused him. He thought she didn't even know how to act like a superior. Chloe asked if he had once served His Majesty directly. Philip admitted he had, and introduced himself as Philip Del Tang, the fifth son of the Del Tang family. Chloe pressed further, asking if he was both the royal attendant and butler here. Philip explained no, he had been given a royal command to only serve at the residence. Chloe then questioned why he acted like he was in charge, pointing out that even though they had said they were tired, he insisted they come down to greet him. Philip quickly apologized, saying he hadn't thought it through, but Chloe accused him of evaluating her beauty, treating her with sarcasm, and overstepping. She asked him directly how she was supposed to feel about a butler with such an attitude. Philip stammered, trying to explain it was a misunderstanding, saying that when he called her beautiful, he only meant he was glad as the butler of the estate. Chloe pressed further, so he wouldn't have been glad if she wasn't pretty? Curtis said, I truly do find you to be beautiful, my lady. Chloe replied, my love, Chloe said things are surprisingly lenient here at the residence. You normally never let your subordinates make you repeat yourself. Curtis replied, well, it's not the military here. Chloe said, still, can you believe after getting scolded for judging me, he's doing it again? I mean, how foolish can one be? Philip said, I swear, Your Grace, I wasn't trying to judge you. I only meant to praise you. Chloe said, that's funny, you seemed quite skilled at insulting me. Philip said, pardon? Whatever do you, Chloe said, when I offered you a handshake earlier, you just had to say, Philip thinks it's an honor to serve a lady, whose hand I may kiss. Remember? Philip said, that's just a customary way of greeting a lady. Chloe said, so I'm beneath even the average lady, and not worthy of a kiss on the hand? Philip replied, that's not what I meant. Chloe said, listen, I don't mind being corrected for a lack of etiquette, but I'm not so ignorant that you need to look down on me. I know all too well about that infuriating roundabout way you like to disapprove of others' choices. It's basically textbook aristocratic backhandedness. Let's translate what you've said to me thus far. Chloe thinks it's an honor to have someone as beautiful as you here. I'm sure this place will be even more lively now. Equals beautiful? Yeah, right. You're the kind of woman even a servant like me can judge. Philip thinks it's an honor to serve a lady, whose hand I may kiss. Equals, do you not even know basic noble etiquette, you fool? Haha, Chloe thinks even though you've been staying at the residence since before the wedding, you're just an easy woman who would hang around a man's estate even before marriage. Chloe said, that's what you mean, right? Philip replied, and no. Absolutely not. I, Philip Del Tang, am only here to serve your grace with the utmost sincerity. I swear it. Philip thinks I had it all planned out perfectly to intimidate this rookie Grand Duchess. But I'm the one who's been pushed into a corner. Could it be that she is far more skilled than me? Philip said, I sincerely apologize, Your Grace. Philip kept his head on the ground and said, I made a lapse in judgment in my excitement to serve a new master. Chloe said, how unfortunate. It looks like you'll have to serve another new master. Pardon? Philip, think serve another new master. Am I getting fired? But I was sent by His Majesty. There's no way she can fire me, or is there? If she's someone who plays outside the bounds of common sense, could it actually happen? Curtis said, let's end things here. After all, he was sent directly by His Majesty. Philip thinks yes. Think about this logically, my lord. Chloe said, but I'm still upset. Curtis replied, that is true. Philip thinks don't agree with her. Curtis said, Philip, I do not want to fire you. It would be an insult to my brother, after all. Philip said, thank you, my lord. Curtis said, however, it is also true that you've ruined the Grand Duchess' first night of marriage. You must offer her your sincerest apologies. For example, how about a service inspection, perhaps? Philip thinks a service inspection. The thing they do to punish soldiers. Curtis said, how does that sound, my love? Chloe replied, that seems too lenient. Curtis said, then what kind of punishment would satisfy you? No firing him, though. For ruining such a good day. How about a shot to the head? Philip said, after all, I am a former Navy officer. Lena, how about I let my hand slip and just say it was an accident? After all, I am a former Navy officer. Lena, how about I let my hand slip and just say it was an accident? Curtis said, Del Tang, what are you doing just standing there? Hurry up and assume the position before the Grand Duchess shoots you. Philip bowed, Your Grace. I beg you for forgiveness. Man thinks I can't believe I have to endure such humiliation. Curtis said, would you look at that? We can't just punish him twice for the same thing now, can we? Chloe replied, what a shame. I guess there's nothing more to do. Sigh, I suppose I'll forgive you this once. Chloe said, however, if you repeat this behavior, keep in mind that a bullet might reach your head even before you get the chance to bow. Philip said, I understand. My deepest apologies, my grace. Chloe said, good. I'll let you off lightly, so take this chance to reflect on your actions. Just stay in that position for 3 more hours. Philip thinks 3 hours? She wants me to stay like this for 3 hours? Chloe said, I'm feeling a bit hungry now. Shall we get going? Everyone, please disperse and start getting dinner ready. She thinks, are they really leaving me here like this? For 3 hours? All alone? I really have to stay here. Seriously? How refreshing. Chloe thinks the food is delicious, the alcohol tastes great, and these appetizers are just perfect. Curtis said, are you satisfied? Chloe said, yes. The overwhelming stress of work has completely vanished. Curtis said, feel free to enjoy yourself when it comes to His Majesty's underlings. It's a good way to release stress. Things are only going to get tougher from here on out. Chloe said, how stressed out do you plan on making me? Chloe said, there's something that will probably give you even more stress than me. Chloe said, starting today, you'll be using the main building. Your room is directly under mine. Chloe replied, the 2nd floor. Curtis replied, right. It's going to be a bit cramped. If you want a bigger room, you can use the 3rd floor of the West Wing, which is where my mother used to live. But I wouldn't recommend it. Chloe said, why not? Curtis said, this residence doesn't have any secret passages, so it's not the most suitable place for royalty. The king intentionally put me in a place like this. So, since this is the situation we're in, if a mysterious fire were to break out in your room, she thinks, and I'm stressed out again. Curtis said, have you finished eating already? Chloe said, yes. After hearing some unappetizing things, Curtis said, you'll get used to it gradually. Let's end the meal here, then. Maid said, have you finished your meal? Curtis replied, yes. Maid asked, then let me guide you to the bathroom. Since it's your first night of marriage, I'll prepare everything so that you can rest well. Chloe thinks so, right? Tonight is the first night. Chloe thinks it's so barren in here. It's so barren in here. There are weapons in arm's reach, and a plain ceiling, so hidden assassins can be easily spotted. This is the place I have to live in from now on. Curtis said, are you standing there praying or something? Chloe replied, yes, Your Highness. Curtis said, this is a first. Chloe replied, what is? Curtis said, bringing a woman into my bedroom. Lies detected. Liar equals jerk. Jerk equals must be eliminated. Chloe thinks I don't have a gun. Curtis said, ah. Are you trying to look for your gun? You're so fun to tease. I sure chose a great duchess. Curtis thinks this is exactly the type of reaction I was looking for. That's how it should be, otherwise, the inexplicable irritation I felt at the banquet, the impulsive decision to give her a gift, and even the kiss. Yeah, if she didn't react that way, it would have meant she was also bothered by it. Chloe said, shouldn't you be happy that your husband isn't some uptight guy who treats premarital purity as some kind of virtue? Chloe said, what is there to be glad about? I'm sure my amazing husband will remain pure after marriage as well. Curtis replied, yes, well, with you wearing something so thin, and just the two of us alone in the bedroom. I wonder if that's really true. Thinks, damn it, I screwed up. Chloe replied, I trust you, Your Highness. Isn't 3 months too short for you to trust me as a reliable superior? Curtis said, how should I put this? Chloe said, I trust your inhumanity, more than your actual humanity. Curtis said, what? Chloe said, Your Highness is someone who, after just 3 months of having me as his adjutant, not only worked me to death with overtime, but also decided to propose a contract marriage. That was a completely shameless thing for you to do. However, I'm sure you know that if you ruin all of this over a mere impulse, that you'll be sending your corpse to be buried in Glintland. Curtis replied, yes, and thinks as if she knows how many instances there were today. Chloe said, what if I do choose to ruin it all? Chloe said, well, if you insist, I'll just give you a swift kick to the groin. So hard that you'll never be able to produce an heir. Then I'll immediately jump out of the window and escape. A Grand Duchess who jumped out of a window on her wedding night. I can only imagine how beautiful the rumors would be. The king would surely hear all about it eventually. And once that happens, I'd coldly sell you out as a rapist to His Majesty. Curtis said, well, that's not going to happen, so stop dreaming. Chloe replied, now that's a relief to hear. If you're done talking now, I'll head off to bed. Good night, Your Highness. Curtis said, what are you doing? You said you trust my inhumanity. It's time to reward you for that trust. Get to work. She said, that's right. This guy holds grudges like no other. Chloe said, ugh, ack. Maid replied, are you tired, my lady? Chloe replied, yes. I barely got any sleep. Maid asked, getting 3 hours of sleep is a lot for a newlywed couple. Chloe said, says the one who's responsible for keeping me up all night. Liar, thinks so, my. Liar said, let me bring you something easy to digest. Please wait a moment, my lady. Chloe replied, thank you. Your Grace, you sure hit the jackpot marrying me. To think you've got a wife who works as hard as me. Curtis smiled and said, I won't deny that. Chloe thinks, a wound? And said, Your Grace, did you get hurt? Curtis said, isn't it time you dropped the stiff formalities? If you keep this up, people will start to gossip that we even speak formally in the bedroom. Chloe thinks, Lord, he's even difficult when I'm trying to worry about him. Chloe said, well, I guess you're not wrong. Curtis said, just eat, we've got a lot to do. She thinks, a lot to do. Chloe said, do I need to check if that plate is poisoned too? Curtis looked at her questioningly and said, what kind of person do you take me for? A villainous boss. Curtis said, no. Subordinate? That's not right either, Chloe asked, husband. Ugh, calling you my husband gives me the creeps. Curtis said, a villainous husband? That's a new one. Anyway, there's plenty of other work for you to do. There will be another diplomatic banquet coming up soon, so you'll have to go and greet the nobles, and also deflect whatever sneaky ploys the king may try to play. Chloe said, also, don't forget to write thank you letters for all the wedding gifts we received. This one here is from Isabel Glintland. Is it normal for someone who was rejected to send a wedding gift? Curtis said, I'm assuming that's why she sent over something cheap. She thinks, it looks nice to me. Chloe said, then, can I get started on the letters after reporting back to my post? Curtis said, you're going back to work already? I think it would be best for you to rest a bit longer. You can't sit around in your nightwear forever. Also, with the upcoming banquet, you should at least take the time to prepare a dress and some accessories. Chloe said, now that I think about it, I guess I do need those, but I don't really have an eye for luxury items. Can I just buy whatever? Curtis said, that makes sense. For now, I'll give you the money to cover what you need. Go look around the shops on Papeton Road, and buy whatever you see fit. The more you look around, the more your taste will develop. Papeton Street, Ivani's biggest luxury shopping district. Chloe said, haha, are you sure you want to let me loose like that? What if I make you go bankrupt? Curtis said, do you think you can? Like you said, I'm inhumane in many ways. That includes my wealth. Chloe said, ugh, you're so conceited, sure, but it's true. Besides, his wealth and personality, Chloe said, what, is not nearly enough to define how inhumane he really is. In the world is that, then the darned sacred flame. Let's go to Basilar. Their ancestors were the ones who sold the sacred flame, right? They must have even better stuff now. Flandra said, how about you go with friends your age? Agnes said, come on, let's go together. We can get some fresh air and eat ice cream, too. She thinks ice cream, all right, I'll go. She said, yay, I'm so excited. Curtis said, what, in the world? Philip said, it's to announce that the Grand Duke has officially been wed. Curtis said, I know that. Chloe thinks, but what century are we living in to still be doing something like this? Is Chloe really okay being with someone who would hang up something like that? I guess not. Dubois arrived and said, it's to announce that the Grand Duke has officially been wed, Your Highness. Chloe said, Your Highness? Chloe replied, don't worry. It's just a small cut. She replied, no. Chloe said, I don't care if you got hurt or not. Using my blood would have been even more out of the question, but we already spent last night rolling around in bed. Wasn't that enough? Curtis asked, do you really think people believe that? Even if they did, what would you gain from it? Chloe thinks, do I need to gain something? Curtis said, Curtis thinks impulses. These damn impulses of mine. In fact, the king didn't even demand proof of our first night together. But that was only possible because everyone already knew that this was a rushed marriage due to the pressure from the king. However, for some reason, Curtis used his own blood. The title of Grand Duchess already came with countless labels born out of prejudice. Both parties knew what they were signing up for. Curtis turned his head and thought, still, there's no need to burden her with this. And said, what a fool. Curtis said, let's get moving. Our guard today is Warrant Officer Dubois. Dubois said, at your service. I'll be standing in for Captain Monfils to guard you, Your Highness. Dubois thinks he's got a different expression on his face today. Yet, when he looks at Chloe, this is going to get interesting. Curtis said, I heard you two were close in the guard. Since my wife has some business to attend to on Papton Street, you'll be accompanying her instead. Chloe said, pardon? Chloe said, do I really need someone like Warrant Officer Dubois there to guard me? It's just a personal errand. Chloe thinks it's awkward. What if he wants to talk about our relationship? How am I supposed to explain it to him? Chloe thinks he'll figure it out. Curtis said, that's exactly why I'm assigning him the task. You are my precious wife, after all. She thinks so. How I wish I could just punch him. Got it, Warrant Officer? Understood, Your Highness. Maid said, wow, look over there. That's the bakery Sis bought cookies from. Chloe thinks, Ezra, Dubois said, I told you not to call me that. Chloe said, I told you not to call me that. Dubois said, I'm afraid I can't, Your Highness. Chloe thinks he's clearly still ticked off. I mean, I get it, but it's not like all our years of friendship just vanished overnight. Curtis said, listen, I had my reasons. Dubois said, I understand. I'm sure it wasn't easy to open up about your private life to me. She thinks he's still acting bitter. She said, look at that doll shop, Iris. How about we play the quiet game? We've arrived at the Basilar jewelry shop. Dubois said, please step down. Chloe said, come on, don't come crying to me later and ask me to tell you how this all happened, you jerk. Your Highness. Chloe thinks, damn Ezra, why do you have to be so petty? Do you think I'm doing this because I want to? Grand Duchess Chloe. Isn't that the Grand Duchess's carriage? Yes. That's Her Grace, the Grand Duchess. It's the Grand Duchess. Chloe said, huh? Reporters said, Your Highness. Did you come alone today? Where are you going? Warrant Officer Ezra Dubois is escorting her. What's the meaning behind the bedsheet? At the wedding. Chloe thinks, have these reporters been following me? Chloe said, huff, huff, we barely made it inside. I didn't expect this many reporters to be surrounding the place. Curtis said, you must be the Grand Duchess? Thank you for making the trip here, Your Highness. I am the sixth heir to the Basilar jewelry house, Baronet Basilar. She said, my name is Bachelor. May I have the honor of kissing the back of your hand, my grace? Chloe thinks a lady kissing the back of another lady's hand? Is that even allowed? I heard she holds a noble title, brainstorming a way to maintain her non-existent dignity. Dubois said that's not permitted for security reasons. Bachelor said, is that so? My apologies. Dubois said honestly, I just wanted to see the sacred flame once more. My father was the one who obtained it. Originally, it was just a big and dull stone, but after some extensive work here, we were able to make it shine. Bachelor said, seeing how it's still shining now truly fills me with pride. Chloe said she must really love jewelry. Enough to even want to kiss the back of my hand. Bachelor said, let me show you to the second floor. There are stairs ahead, so please be careful. Chloe said, thank you. And you are? Bachelor's sister said, this is Camille Bachelor. My apologies for not introducing her first. Bachelor said, she's my younger sister. She currently does craft work on the third floor. She said, now then, let me show you what we have. Bachelor said, this is the pride of our shop, the main exhibition hall. Chloe said, whoa. It's so amazing. Girl said, everything's so sparkly. Bachelor said, haha, I'm glad you like it. Bachelor said, honestly, I should have gone directly to you, so I was so surprised to learn you'd be coming today. Please have a seat. Actually, Chloe said, don't really have an eye for this, so I came to take a look at everything from low-end to high-end jewelry. Bachelor said, all of it? Chloe said, yes, I need to see the lower quality ones too, so I can understand the difference. Do you not have any low-end products here? Bachelor said, unfortunately, we mainly select high-end pieces to display here. Maid said, still, simply browsing around their collection should help sharpen your eye. Why don't you at least look around? Bachelor said, she's right. Since you've come all the way here, let me show you what we have. Our quality is something that'll be quite difficult to find anywhere else. Chloe said, oh, this one's so pretty. Bachelor said, that piece. A ruby necklace called the Blood Queen. About 20 years ago in the Torca Kingdom, a countess waged war for decades to obtain this necklace, and neither her husband, her family, nor anyone could stop her obsession. She ultimately devastated everything within several miles of her territory, and when she couldn't find the person who hid the necklace, she died of heartbreak. Chloe thinks that's a lot of information. She really is obsessed with jewelry. Ultimately, items of this caliber come down to personal taste. In other words, there's no such thing as the best piece. No matter how expensive a piece is, it's useless if the owner doesn't like it. Is there anything here that stands out to you? Chloe thinks this is pretty, but Chloe said, I'm not sure. Maybe it's because I still don't really have an eye for these things. Bachelor said, that's how most people are at first. How about we choose something based on the colors you like? Chloe said, pardon? Chloe said, I knew she'd be surprised. Even though I've become the Grand Duchess, here I am still being stingy about spending money on things like this. But I mean, honestly, they're just a bunch of rocks. I can't eat them, and they're not even a necessity. They're just rocks. Spending millions of shillings on things like this is just something I can't wrap my head around. Girl said, still, you do need to have a few pieces in your collection, some for banquets, outings, daily use, and so on. There are a lot of times you'll need to have something to choose from. Chloe thinks my common sense doesn't fly in a place like this. Chloe said, then maybe something in a more neutral color. Julia said, just spend some money, Chloe. No one goes for neutral colors when looking for jewelry. Your entire closet is full of boring brown clothes already. Chloe said, hey. Brown is a perfectly nice and neutral color. Julia said, you're still looking for brown things even after becoming the Grand Duchess? Why don't you just ask for brown jewels as well? Chloe said, what's it to you if I like brown, huh? Julia said, oh please. I also want to be able to steal pretty things from my sister's wardrobe like younger siblings do, okay? Chloe said, do it then. Julia said, there's gotta be decent options for me too. So buy something nice for once. The Grand Duke said you could spend however much you want. Girl said, our sister likes brown clothes because she says they remind her of me. Curtis said, I see. Girl said, but Leah says that's a lie. She says brown clothes are cheap because they don't need to be dyed. Chloe and Julia shout. Bachelor's sister said, my apologies. You all just reminded me of how I used to bicker with my sister when we were little. Bachelor said, Camille. Get down on your knees and apologize right now. Bachelor and his sister bowed and said, we've committed an unforgivable sin, Your Highness. My thoughtless younger sister was out of line. Chloe said, and no, it's fine, please stand up. We were the ones being thoughtless. I know you didn't mean any harm. Bachelor said, I'm sorry, truly sorry, Your Highness. Chloe thinks she's apologizing so much, even though I've told her it's fine. Chloe said, well then, it might not be much of a substitute, but you're the artisan here, right? Bachelor replied, yes, that's correct. Chloe said, then can I look at some things like the necklace you're wearing? Bachelor asked Elle like this. Forgive me, but those items are not ones we offer for sale. Chloe said, is that so? I thought they would be since a bachelor artisan is wearing them. I do like big jewels, but I can't wear something so flashy all the time. I also need some things for my sisters, as well, Bachelor said. Actually, Camille replied, the truth is, this piece was made by my father. If you'd like, I can show you his collection. Chloe said, yes, if that's okay. Camille said, this is my father's collection. Chloe said, they're so cute and pretty. Even kids could wear these. Girl said, a heart-shaped jewel. Bachelor said, we used to sell these, but we've changed our store policy. They're also a bit too cute for a noble lady to wear. Chloe said, look how good it looks on Camille. Your father must be very proud. Camille said, sis, look. A princess crown. Chloe said, it looks good on you. Bachelor said, that piece was actually made for a real princess. We stopped producing them 10 years ago once our father passed away. Ah, really? Haven't these black opal stones only been imported for the last 5 years? How did you? Chloe said, back then, the Navy was preparing to go to war over it. That's how I know. Bachelor said, I wasn't trying to deceive you, Your Highness. To be honest, it's a piece I made. Chloe said, I see, I understand. She thinks I guess there's no need to go into details if they're not going to sell it. Bachelor said, Your Grace, I can explain if you'd like. I was just worried about wasting your time with unnecessary details. Why is she still going after I said it was fine? Oh right, I'm the Grand Duchess. That's why people find me so intimidating. I guess it's a good thing I didn't go back to work, otherwise, I might have ended up causing a scandal without even realizing it. It's a bit of a burden, but there's nothing I can do, I should just get going. She said, that's all right. I'm really not upset. It's just that this one looked prettier to me. Chloe said, it's a shame you're not selling it. Monfils said, well, I guess it might look good to someone without a discerning eye. Lady M. Monfils? Bachelor said, how did you get in here? The store should have been closed off as it was reserved for Her Highness today. Ranima van Overtime. This is what I get for having the wrong friends. Shall we rebel, Warrant Officer Ambroise? Haha, just kidding. Chloe thinks Monfils? The only Monfils I know is that guy. Curtis said, Noel, I trust you, but you know to keep this a secret, especially from Agatha, right? Noel said, of course. Chloe said, Agatha? Ah, she's my little sister. She likes him. Agatha said, how could something like that happen? Poor thing. Chloe said, I know. Agatha doesn't even receive contractual payments like you. Curtis said, Noel, stop fooling around and get a fake contract ready to submit to the royal court. Monfils thinks she's the pitiful girl who has a crush on Curtis.